Welcome to the Honest Dog Breeder Podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan, where each week we dive in to discuss all things dog breeding so you can build a breeding business you love, producing dogs that fulfill their owners' dreams. I believe you can have an honest dog breeding program that also pays the bills. So throw those pods in your ears while you're cleaning kennels. I'd love to join you. The first goats I ever bought were a tiny little female doeling and a nanny goat who was bred. I drove 4 hours to get these goats and thought I would put them in the back of my midsize SUV. I had a water-resistant liner in the back and thought it would be fine. Ooh, I swear the goat went to the bathroom every 30 minutes that entire drive home. It took 2 months for the smell of goat to leave my vehicle after cleaning. Needless to say, I learned a few things that trip. 1, WeatherTech liners are your best friend. Traveling with goats inside your vehicle is not fun. And that fact led me to the thought number 3. I don't like transporting animals unless I need to. That experience led me to buying my own bucks so that I could breed my goats at my house, and I would never need to put a goat in my SUV again. My experience with owning my own buck goats went really well. I never missed a heat cycle with a doe, and it was as simple as moving him in her pen at that time of year. It sort of felt like a set it and forget it thing. When I decided to breed Buster, my first German Shorthair, it made complete sense to me to do what I did with the goats and bring in a new stud dog once Buster had daughters by my females. I never really thought about any other option other than owning my own studs. I had been breeding quite a few years before I had any breeder friends. I guess I sort of live in my own world sometimes. I certainly had it with breeders on Facebook. When I first made some breeder friends, I found that it wasn't necessarily standard to own your own stud. It seemed that some people did and some people didn't. I started hearing about co-owns, which I had known existed, but never to the extent that I see them now. I learned that many people never even considered owning their own stud, let alone 2 of them. I also found that the trend of owning, co-owning, or using AI tended to follow breeds and regions, as in it was more popular and common in some breeds or locations than others. Many of you have asked about owning your own stud, and many of you have asked about co-owns and guardian homes. Today I want to discuss the pros and cons of owning your own studs so you can see what works best for you. First, let's talk about the cons of owning your own studs. The first obvious thing is that it limits your genetics to own your own studs. When you look at a bank of dogs to select for AI, it seems weird to choose to have one stud that lives in your home and manages your girls. Why would you settle for so few options? Having one stud can impact your genetic diversity, especially if you are still honing your bloodline and would do well to be in an aggressive breeding program, not a sustainment one. If you want to learn more about aggressive and sustainment programs, definitely check out episode 23. The next con is that owning your own stud creates some management issues, especially if you own 2. I've always thought that humans are the only species where 2 intact males can live relatively harmoniously under the same roof, and even then that's debatable. 2 stud dogs can be a lot of management, especially if you don't have the facilities. Breaking up a stud fight is tough, and much worse if the dogs are bigger relative to you. You'll also need more facilities to manage studs, and if the management fails, you can have unplanned litters or breedings with the wrong stud, or need to do DNA because you aren't sure which stud it was. Beyond having the facilities, a stud is another dog you have to manage. He needs training, quality time with you, with other dogs, enrichment, and exercise. In addition to the time management, a stud will cost money to feed. He will have his own vet bills and all the other expenses that come with dog ownership. If you try and have a stud or 2 before you have facilities, it can be a real burden to you and your family because of the time and financial investment that having a stud creates. Obviously, this is easier if you have a smaller breed, but regardless, it still takes thinking, planning, and a latch left open, a crate door not completely locked, or a hole in the fence can create a whole lot of complication in seconds. You'll often hear trainers say that management fails because it isn't a perfect solution. With all this chaos, why would you ever want to own your own stud, let alone 2 or more? Well, there are some reasons to own your own stud or studs. Let me explain some of the pros of stud ownership. You have complete control over his availability. If you co-own a stud or have him in a guardian home, you don't always have control of where he's at and when. Same with using stud service and often with AI. Regardless of ownership, if the stud doesn't live with you, then you have to coordinate with the people who have him and get him either to your place or get your girl to his place. This coordination can open a can of worms. What if the family who has him is going on a camping trip and wants to take him? What if the dog has an event he's scheduled to attend? What if they have poor communication and coordinating is just misery? What if they feed him a terrible food and you find out he's nowhere near as healthy as you thought? It comes down to moving pieces. When there are more moving pieces and less things you can control, the harder it will be to get everything in alignment. When you own your own stud, you have none of these issues. When a girl is in heat, you throw him in the pen with her and the rest is done. You never have to worry that the semen isn't the right temperature or that it was mishandled. And you don't have to worry about timing. He takes care of it. It's simple and effective. If you are new to breeding, progesterone testing can be a pain. Taking the dog to the vet all the time, hoping you got the right timing, finding a good vet with experience in AI. It's a lot. Studs, especially experienced ones, which is essentially any stud who has bred 2 to 3 times, are incredible at detecting fertility. In fact, my stud Rusty is so good at this that he will check out any female I put with him and immediately know if now is the time. He doesn't get fussy, he doesn't try anything unless she's ready. In my opinion, he's more accurate than any test you could perform. Now the younger studs, they're helpful too. While they often will try to breed a female the whole heat cycle, they are very helpful early on in detecting a girl coming into heat. For example, it's nice to know when your female has her first silent heat, which is the first heat that often goes unnoticed as there may not be swelling and there usually isn't blood. A young stud will notice the change in her scent, and that helps me figure out the timing of her heat cycles, which helps my planning. When she's older, the younger studs will be interested in her for a day or two, about 4 weeks before she comes into heat, which is incredibly helpful if I needed to coordinate anything if I were using an outside stud, but also to know for planning's sake that I need to be home at that time. In-tech males are so good at noticing these things that cattle ranchers actually will give a bull a vasectomy so that he can live among the cows and let the rancher know which cow is in estrus. It's incredible. They actually have this thing called a chin ball, and it's like a collar that the bull wears, and it has a ball of paint under the chin. If you've ever been lucky enough to see that act, you'll know that the bull hugs her in a way that his chin rubs her back. With this chin ball, he will actually paint her back. If he's an intact bull, the rancher will know she's been bred. But if he's had a vasectomy, the rancher will know she's ready for AI. Between a rancher spending 30 minutes evaluating his cows and a bull living with them 24 hours a day, the rancher noted only 74% of the cows in estrus, while the bulls averaged 97 to 100% accuracy in detecting estrus. It's hard to fight those numbers. They're just good at what they do. These teaser bulls are still the most cost-effective way to annotate cows in estrus. It's the same with dogs. You can't beat the accuracy. Accuracy in detecting heats means an improved probability you'd have puppies when you want them. As your program grows, you know the timing of your females, when they cycle, about how many puppies you can expect. Then you'll be able to better convey that information to your buyers. Help them understand when they can expect to get a puppy. My breeding program is well tracked. I know about how many puppies I will have and when, and I share this with my buyers. I simply couldn't have this predictability and consistency if I didn't own my own studs. It gives me peace of mind to know I won't miss any heat cycles. So aside from convenience and predictability, why else might you want to own your own studs? Because you intimately know them. I know everything about my studs, their health, their structure, the things they are good at, what they struggle with. I know their temperaments, and I know how they manage different situations. I know how much drive they have, what their natural abilities are, and I know all their quirks. This is simply something you can't get with a dog who doesn't live with you. He may have all the titles, the best health testing records, and the owner may rave about him, but you just won't know him in the same way. Temperament and drive are so genetic. And what makes a dog is so dynamic that it almost feels reckless to choose a dog off of a picture, a written blurb, a title, or a pedigree. I love getting my hands on a dog, knowing his personality in and out. I feel like it gives me so much more information that I couldn't get any other way. Beyond the benefit of intimately knowing my studs, I love that I can show my potential buyers my studs. They can meet him, see him interact with them. I have a stud Boot. He's a total goofball. Naming him after a shoe was a great pick by Bill. It really fits him. He was supposed to be about 55 to 60 pounds, and through some hidden gene anomaly, he's 80 pounds. He has become a very popular stud in my breeding program. Anyways, everyone who meets Boot loves him. He's his own best ambassador. He is always in a good mood. He's funny, and best of all, when I let him out to meet potential buyers, he's always excited to meet them and usually ends up doing the lean on their leg. He has this quirk where he just has to be touching you at all times, and that usually means his butt is leaning on your leg. Just enough so that if you moved fast enough, he'd fall over. This personality quirk is very genetic, like many personality quirks. And if you've experienced this, you'd fall in love with him too. It's just one small thing of many, but it means a lot to buyers when they can meet both parents of the pups. So how do you figure out what's right for you? Well, first I want you to think of the level of additional management and financial costs as a slider that represents a burden or improvement to you and your family. What do I mean by level of management? Well, it's how many systems and rules everyone in the household has to follow and adapt to in order for it to work with a stud or multiple studs. If you have multiple exercise pens that are secure and you could leave the studs outside all day, leave your house, go to work, go shopping, or whatever, how worried would you be? Do you trust the dogs will be safe? Are you not even thinking about it? Or are you in the middle of Target, nauseous, worried of what you'll come home to? When you get to the place where you can be comfortable leaving the dogs for an extended period of time, or not worry that your 3-year-old will accidentally open the wrong door and a fight could ensue, then that's when owning your own studs pays off in spades. If you aren't at a sustainment level in your program, then owning a dog you won't be using isn't super helpful for you. And therefore the cost to manage that dog is more a burden to the family finances than it is helpful. When you get a new stud puppy, make sure to spend some money and time building your facilities that first year, so it is easier to manage him once he realizes he's a male at around a year old. Studs are just as fun and loving as the girls, but they can be a little bit more to manage. We just want to make sure we are set up to take them on, especially a second one. Most people, not just breeders, can manage a single intact dog. It's when you add that second dog that things become more complicated. So we just need to do our due diligence and plan correctly so we aren't burdening our loved ones, our dogs, nor ourselves. As far as finances, consider how much more money you'll save and how much easier your program will be to run when you have your own stud. If you've ever missed a heat cycle and have disappointed buyers, just one litter with your stud will recuperate his cost. Most of the time, studs more than make up for their costs. Owning a stud can be an incredibly rewarding endeavor, one I'm very fond of. I'm excited for you to have the stud or studs of your dreams, and I hope this helps you prepare for it. In the next few weeks, we will open the doors to Dog Breeding 101, a comprehensive course to help you confidently breed, whelp, raise, and home your first few litters to quality homes. If you want more information or to sign up on the waitlist, please check out honestdogbreeder.com/DB101. That's Delta Bravo 101. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Honest Dog Breeder podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan. I really appreciate you spending your precious time with me. See you in the next episode.